Here, we are going to discuss uses of tenses. Number 1. Simple present tense. That is, only V1 or do or does plus V1. Note, in simple present, we add s or es to the root form of the main verb or to the auxiliary verb if the subject is third person singular, such as he, she, it, these, that, or any singular noun. Number 1. We use simple present tense for a regular action. For example, we buy books every month. The bus usually arrives at 2:30 p.m. Number 2. For a general truth or fact. For example, man is mortal. Children are innocent. The earth moves around the sun. Water flows downward. Number 3. For a present habit. For example, he studies till late night. He often bites his nails. Number 4. For one's present occupation. For example, his father teaches music. The two brothers deal in shoes. Number 5. To express one's duty. For example, a mother takes care of her children. A king protects his people. Number 6. For a planned or scheduled action. For example, he leaves for New York next week. English Premier League starts tomorrow. Number 7. To introduce a quotation. For example, Lincoln says, if slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. Francis Bacon says, knowledge is power. Number 8. To write a proverb. For example, ignorance is the mother of suspicion. Talkers are no good doers. Number 9. We use present continuous tense in general to talk about actual present. But in certain cases, when the verb cannot be written in the continuous form, we use simple present. For example, I see a burglar in the house. The cat is on the table. Number 10. To describe a past incident in a lively way. For example, Alexander now rushes upon the enemy. Ashoka then invades Kalinga with a large army. Number 11. Sometimes in lieu of present perfect tense or present continuous tense. For example, I hear you have acted in a film. They live in Yorkshire nowadays. Number 12. If there are two future action clauses, the subordinate clause is always written in simple present tense. For example, I shall wait here till they arrive. If the rain continues, we will have to cancel our plans. Number 13. For a present state or condition. For example, his brother is still not mature. The apples on the table are fresh. Number 14. To express position at present. For example, his father has a huge property. They have a small Jew in their house. Now let us come to present continuous tense. That is or am or are plus before. Number 1. We use present continuous tense for an action going on at the present moment. For example, we are watching a movie in the cinema. He is watering flowers in the garden. Number 2. For a temporary action taking place in present days. For example, I am going to the gym these days. My father is writing a new story. Number 3. To show the future time to be very near, we use present continuous tense either directly or in the going to form instead of simple future tense. For example, his brother is arriving tomorrow. We are going to organize a meeting shortly. Note, the going to form is used to express a plan, intention, or likelihood. Note, certain verbs like be, belong, hope, depend, involve, owe, like, see, want, desire, love, hate, own, possess, contain, consist, include, see, wish, appear, hear, sound, agree, disagree, promise, satisfy, believe, imagine, remember, know, understand, miss, protect, need, etc. cannot be written in the continuous form. However, they can be used in the gerundial form. For example, I'm understanding your language is wrong because it cannot be written in the continuous form. The correct form is I understand your language. I have no difficulty in understanding your language is right because it can be used in the gerundial form. I'm promising you it's wrong because it cannot be written in the continuous form. The correct form is I promise you. Promising someone is foolishness. It's right because it can be written in the gerundial form. Now let us come to present perfect tense, that is have or has plus V3. Number 1, we use present perfect tense for a recent action. For example, I have received your letter. The tense of our form tells us that the letter has been received recently. They have got married. The tense of our form tells us that they have got married recently. My brother has just gone out. We have arrived just now. They have recently shifted to New York. She has already paid for the dress. Note, present perfect tense is commonly used if there are time words like just now, recently, and already. Note again, sometimes we use simple past tense instead of present perfect tense to put stress on the action of the verb. For example, they got married. Although it is a recent action, we have written in simple past tense in order to put stress on the action of the verb. I received your letter. We have used simple past tense despite the fact that it is a recent action. We did so only to put stress on the action of the verb. Number 2, to express a past action, especially when the time is irrelevant. For example, have you ever passed through a forest at night? I have never seen her before. Number 3, to refer to a past action that continued up to present. For example, Mr. Smith has worked in this college for more than 10 years. I have not seen her for a long time. Note, maybe Mr. Smith is still working or has stopped working. And maybe I see her now or still don't see. But it doesn't matter because here we refer to only that part of the action which continued till now, not that part which is continuing. Note again, sometimes, especially when we talk with feeling, emotion or excitement, we use is, am and are in place of have and has in present perfect tense. For example, she's gone instead of she has gone. I am come instead of I have come. The sun is set instead of the sun has set. The sun is rising instead of the sun has risen. Now let us come to present perfect continuous tense, that is have been or has been plus before. Number 1, we use present perfect continuous tense to refer to an action that started in the past and is still continuing. For example, we have been living here since 1970. He has been watching television for several hours. Note, unlike present perfect tense, here we also refer to that part of the action that is continuing at present. Note again, we use since in case of point of time and for in case of period of time. For example, since 8 o'clock, since morning, since yesterday, since Wednesday, since last month, since December, since 1986, for a few seconds, for a few minutes, for several hours, for a few days, for 2 weeks, for 6 months, for 10 years, for several decades, for centuries, etc. And we must use since or for in present perfect continuous tense. Note, in case of certain verbs which cannot be written in the continuous form, we use present perfect tense or simple present tense instead of present perfect continuous tense. For example, we have been knowing each other for many years is wrong. The right form is we have known each other for many years, or we know each other for many years. This perfume has not been lasting long. It's wrong. The right form is this perfume has not lasted long, or this perfume doesn't last long. Now let us come to simple past tense, that is only V2 or did plus V1. Number 1. We use simple past tense for any completed action, no matter it has been completed recently or long before. However, we also use present perfect tense for an action completed recently. For example, I wrote a new story. We can also write I have written a new story since it is a recent action. The Battle of Plataea took place long ago. Note, if we use certain time adverbs like ago, yesterday, last, previous, etc., we must write in simple past tense. Number 2, we use simple past tense for a past state or condition. For example, I was rather a naive young man. The book was old and dusty. Number 3, to talk about possession in the past. For example, I had some money in my pocket. They had an old-fashioned car. Number 4, to talk about a past or discontinued habit. For example, he went to meet her very often. He visited the church frequently. Note, we also use would or used to talk about a past habit. For example, he would or used to meet her very often. He would or used to visit the church frequently. Number 5, for a past occupation. For example, his father taught music, or his father was a music teacher. Number 6, we can use simple past tense instead of past continuous tense, especially when we make a comparison between two. For example, he dozed while I studied. That means he was dozing while I was studying. The players sat in the pavilion due to rain, but I practiced. That means the players were sitting in the pavilion due to rain, but I was practicing. Note, if we put stress on the time and not on the comparison, then we can write in past continuous tense. For example, he was searching for something while I was studying in my room. Note here, when we compare or mean whereas, we put a comma before while, but we don't need any comma before while when we refer to time. Number 7, to imagine an unreal incident. For example, if I were a king, I could gift you a bungalow. Note here, for an unreal incident we use were, not was. Note again, we also use had been, that is past perfect tense, for an unreal incident. For example, if I had been a king, I could have gifted you a bungalow. If I had nothing, I would toil for everything. If I knew his address, I could collect the money from him. Note, for imaginary statements we can also use past perfect tense. We can also say, if I had known his address, I could have collected the money from him. Note here, if the conditional or subordinate clause is in simple past, we use could or would in the principal clause. And if the conditional or subordinate clause is in past perfect tense, we use could have or would have in the principal clause. Number 8, after certain expressions like I wish and it is time. For example, I wish I could fly in the sky. I wish I knew his address. It is time we had our dinner. It is time we went to bed. Note, although we have written the sentences in simple past tense, they have present time reference. Here we talk about present time only, not about past. Now let us come to past continuous tense, that is was or were plus before. Number 1, we use past continuous tense to refer to the continuity of an action in the past, no matter it continued incessantly or at intervals. For example, they were having lunch. Simon was learning karate in those days. Number 2, between two past actions, the action which was completed is written in simple past and the action which was continuing is written in past continuous tense. For example, when I saw her, she was watering flowers in the garden. A car hit the old man when he was crossing the road. Note, the action of hitting the old man was not going on continuously. It took place only once. But the action of crossing the road was going on. Note, if both actions were continuing, both would be written in past continuous tense. For example, he was searching for something while I was studying in my room. Number 3. To express nearness of an action in the past, we use going to form. For example, the 2 or 3 men were going to create a ruckus in the meeting. He was going to fight with his brother. Now let us come to past perfect tense, that is had plus V3. Number 1. We use past perfect tense for an action that took place long ago. For example, humans had produced fire by rubbing 2 stones or dry things. Everyone had left the town for the influenza epidemic. Note, sometimes we write such sentences in simple past to put stress on the verb or to show the action as if it took place not long ago. For example, humans produced fire by rubbing 2 stones or dry things. Everyone left the town for the influenza epidemic. Number 2. To narrate a recent action as though it took place long ago. For example, I had practiced a lot before the match. Someone had stolen his wallet in the morning. I had waited for you for about an hour. Number 3. Between 2 completed actions, the action which took place first is written in past perfect tense and the one which took place next is written in simple past. For example, the match had started before we reached the stadium. We went out to play after the rain had stopped. The train had already started when we reached the station. I had already done my works before my friends arrived. Number 4. For impractical imaginations or assumptions. For example, if I had done it, I should have died in shame. I wish I had met you 10 years ago. Now let us come to past perfect continuous tense, that is, had been plus before. Number 1. We use past perfect continuous tense for an action that continued for a certain period in the past. For example, he had been doing exercise for long hours. We had been playing the game since morning. Note, we must mention the time in present perfect continuous tense, but to mention the time in past perfect continuous tense is not a hard and fast rule. We also may not mention the time in past perfect continuous tense. For example, I had been waiting for you. This means that I had been waiting for a certain period of time. They had been gossiping. This means that they had been gossiping for a short or long period of time. Number 2. To express that an action was in progress before another action was done. For example, I had been writing something before you came. They had been sleeping when I returned. Now let us come to simple future tense, that is shall or will plus V1. Number 1. We use simple future tense to express a future happening, state, action, or condition. For example, war will not take place again. I will not be tired. He will stay with us for a week. The mangoes will be ripe soon. Number 2. To make a promise. I will pay the tab by next week. We will surely attend your party. Note, if there are 2 future actions expressing condition, we write one in simple future and another in simple present. We usually write the principal clause in simple future and the subordinate or conditional clause in simple present. For example, I will wait here until you come. We shall start the meeting when the secretary arrives. I will forget this soon if I don't note it down right now. You will not reach your goal unless you have passions. Note here, if the 2 future actions do not express any condition, we can use different tenses with simple future. For example, I'm going to say what I will do here. Walk fast or we will miss the train. He will announce who will come on the stage next. I have already predicted who will win the match. Now let us come to future continuous tense, that is, shall be or will be plus before. Number 1. We use future continuous tense to express that an action will be in progress in future. For example, I will be doing exercise tomorrow morning. She will be waiting for me when I go home. Number 2. For future plans or arrangements. For example, he will be opening a garage next month. We shall be returning home in the evening. Note here, we also use going to form for future plans or arrangements and sometimes be plus to plus root verb form for official matters. For example, the Prime Minister is going to visit America next month, or the Prime Minister is to visit America next month. Now let us come to future perfect tense, that is, shall have or will have plus V3. Number 1. We use future perfect tense to express that an action will be completed by a certain point of time in future or before another future action. For example, I will have completed the work by then. We shall have finished the project by next week. He will have left for office before we reach there. The train will have left before we arrive at the station. Note, we write the first action in future perfect tense and the second action in simple present. Now let us come to future perfect continuous tense, that is, shall have been or will have been plus before. Number 1. We use future perfect continuous tense to express that a future action will be in progress from a certain point of time or for a certain period of time. For example, we will have been taking rest for an hour after lunch. They will have been working on this project from tomorrow. Note here, this tense is not so much used nowadays as there is a growing tendency of using simple future or future continuous tense instead of future perfect continuous tense. For example, we will take rest for an hour after lunch. They will be working on this project from tomorrow.